In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Buenos dias, hippies, paz en el barrio. I hope if you're looking forward to a long and pleasant weekend, you'll remember to thank a union for it. Remember that old French saying, the more things change, etc., etc., etc. I was reminded of that phrase earlier this week when I reread a piece I wrote on my Well-Armed Lamb blog back in 2007. Actually, it was October 31st to be precise, 2007. The following, and with Joe's grace, is a slightly amended version of that. At some campaign event in 2007, then Senator, and incipient presidential candidate, now head lobbyist for the Motion Picture Association, Chris Dodd had candidly addressed the issue of marijuana decriminalization, far more candidly and probably more honestly than is usual in these or in those days, these increasingly censorious times. Dodd described how criminalizing marijuana use had filled the prisons, clogged the judicial system, and severely sanctioned a behavior that is, in the long run, less toxic than at least one and probably many uses of legal drugs. God knows Dodd's remarks were an island of sanity and a torrent of craziness where marijuana use is concerned, but I am very skeptical that any sanity can or will ever attend discussions of decriminalization for a number of reasons, mainly because it supports a whole culture of socially repressive measures and has engendered an industry of massive power and proportions. Too many jobs, too much pork, too much power, too much money. All that depends on the war on drugs. To imagine that those who benefit, profit, and prosper because of it will ever voluntarily or willingly surrender their perquisites. Like its younger sibling, the global war on terror, the war on drugs is an amazingly useful program. It's endlessly self-sustaining and self-enriching. It has a bottomless political support. It has been instrumental in forging links between local police departments and the Pentagon. It invokes a mythology of invasion and border security, and it gins up the proletarian paranoia to a fever pitch, such that some bloated cracker in the border country of Arizona is running for sheriff on a platform of landmines under the border fence. Moreover, it's a staple in the repression of people of color. Pot busts put a blot on your record in the serious universe. One way to keep undesirables out of the workplace is to disqualify them right from the get-go, right? And that's I've already figured that out. It doesn't matter how you test it, it's who you test that matters. Pot convictions can disqualify a person from voting. Very, very useful for disenfranchising potentially disruptive voters, wouldn't you say? Prison guards in California, their union prevented the reform of the 3 strikes and mandatory sentencing laws. Did you know that? Victims of which are overwhelmingly drug and mainly pot-related charges, by ferociously lobbying state lawmakers to defeat those laws because they would mean loss of jobs if the reforms passed and fewer people were then incarcerated, necessitating fewer guards to manage them. California has also chosen to build prisons instead of universities, which is suggestive, to me at least, of the trajectory anticipated for social mobility and utility for these institutions in the foreseeable future. Tom Hartman frequently repeats the statistic that there are nearly 1 million home invasions every year by police, the majority of which are prompted by nothing so much as the report of a family drug crop in the basement or a family quarrel in the living room. Enforcement agencies, police forces, municipalities all prosper from appropriation and resale of quote-unquote drug-related property. The drug testing industry has only recently really gotten off the ground in the last decade or so, but it already constitutes a huge wealthy factor in the war on drugs when every kid in America who wants to participate in any sport at school must submit to tests in which the primary object is to discover marijuana and sometimes steroid use. The current governor of Florida profits from every drug test administered in that state because he owns the testing companies. I admired, at the time, Dodd for his candor and abominate, and still do, the others for their caution, but likely as not, the war on drugs will continue as long as the global war on terror, which is to say, hippies, endlessly. Here's a late addition. Recently, a litigator turned legal scholar, Michelle Alexander, the University of at the Ohio University, no, like the Ohio State University, beg your pardon, published a book on the new Jim Crow. In it, she captured the true dimensions of the problem I had barely alluded to above, that the use of the war on drugs as a tool of repression, especially aimed at black men. It's a virtual fail-safe expedient to disempower and marginalize the whole black community by mass incarceration of the men, along with the social stigma which attended those punishments. I heard Michelle Alexander one night recently sustain and repel a fairly hostile interview. I think it was on UCTV. She makes a compelling argument. We can argue about it at the beach. Pause, hippies.